Good afternoon, everyone, here and online. You've now heard from some 30 plus metal explorers, developers and producers, targeting metals such as gold, nickel, copper, cobalt, vanadium and lithium. They're all important, but are they needed for your food production? Are they minerals essential for life? I'm here to talk about #mining for farmers and mining for global food security. I started Trigg mining with the purpose to build mines communities can be proud of. And we're doing this by exploring for an organic mineral fertiliser known as sulphate of potash, as Paul just described, that you can just go and buy at Bunnings, but how did it get there in the first place? And it contains essential minerals for food production. I'm also going to talk about a very different style of production from mining. Many of us, especially those from the WA School of Mines in Kalgoorlie, are very much hard rock miners, where we dig a pit, underground, waste rock dumps, truck it, drill and blast it before that, and then obviously it goes to the process plant to be ground, crushed, ground, and then chemicals to treat and produce metals. But sulphate of potash, the minerals are already dissolved in the water. It's a salt in the hypersaline brines in the goldfields. Now, many of us in the goldfields looking for gold and developing pits have dewatered these paleochannel systems, treating it as total dissolved solids with a discharge solution. But a lot of these paleochannels, which we've discovered in recent years, are really enriched in potassium and brines, and that's a valuable fertiliser. So we can produce this sustainably. So Trigg Mining is a modern, purpose-driven company. We're targeting sulphate of potash in those hypersaline brines of the paleochannels, the ancient riverbed systems in the northeastern goldfields. In fact, Gruyere is our neighbour, where we're operating there at Lake THROSSELL. And with the minerals already dissolved in water, the production method is through solar evaporation. So we can use the modern thoughts around energy and sustainability just by the nature of our deposit. The company has over 1,500 square kilometres of strategic tenure across two key sulphate of potash projects, Lake THROSSELL and Lake RASON. And they are both located in Western Australia, which is very much considered, especially now with COVID, being a low-risk jurisdiction. From a product demand perspective, there's three key global megatrends converging to drive demand growth for this product. The expanding world population, reducing area of arable land, and increasing use of fertiliser to replenish the soils to increase yields and continue to feed that population. And we're also seeing greater trends towards sustainable agriculture. Our farmers are understanding the value of the soils and looking after their soils and maintaining the mineral balance in the soils and the pH, which is also very important. So all of this leads to increasing demand for sulphate of potash, especially the primary source that Trigg is targeting. So the quick snapshot, the corporate overview, as Paul may have mentioned, market cap of $10 million, 4 in the bank. So keep that in mind as I talk about these exciting stories or exciting projects that we have. So northeastern goldfields, you can see there Lake THROSSELL sits there on the Great Central Road. Right now, the state government in Western Australia, the Northern Territory government and the Queensland government are upgrading that central road to be the third trade route across the country. At the moment, it's a gravel road. It's a reasonable gravel road, but it's not reliable all year round. So by bitumising it, we will have a third trade route. And that is going to go right through our project. And the expectation is the work has already started. The first 40 kilometres out of Laverton is under construction at the moment. In fact, I saw a photograph of that on LinkedIn yesterday, so everyone's very proud of what's happening out there. And that's going to be bitumised possibly up to our mine gate in the next couple of years. We've also, with being next to Gruyere, there's a gas pipeline. we've got airstrip, we've got the Laverton Airport, a couple of 100 k's to the west. And then for export opportunities, we've got road infrastructure, obviously, into Western Australia, the road across to the east coast, and rail. So at Leonora there is a railhead where we can take the product down to Esperance and ship it out internationally. So we've got access to all the markets, the domestic market, and Australia imports all of its potash needs, so that's a fantastic opportunity for us to look at both sides of the country as well as export market. So why sulphate of potash? There are two main types of potash. One that we hear about in the market all the time called muriated potash, and that's potassium chloride, and that's at the bottom of this slide. It is a bulk commodity. It's about a 70 million tonne per annum market. The product though is 50% chloride. So it's a very inefficient fertiliser because for half of it, which is what the farmers are targeting, the potassium, the chloride is a detrimental component. It's like in sodium chloride, your table salt. So it increases the salinity of the soil and impacts the pH as well, especially in acidic soils. It makes them more acidic. So it upsets the microorganism balance, and the farmers need to, especially on a broadacre crop, need to then lime to rebalance all of those things. So it makes it a very inefficient product, especially when it's brought into Australia from places like Canada, Russia and Belarus. So it is transported a long way and a very inefficient fertiliser. Potassium sulphate, on the other hand, only contains nutrients that the farmers need and nutrients that our food needs. It's got potassium, one of the 3 macronutrients, and sulphur. And sulphur is considered to be a 4th macronutrient. But when you go down to Bunnings and you look at the fertiliser stand, you see a variety of different brand products, but they all talk about a ratio NPK. N being nitrogen, P being phosphorus, and K being potassium. And that's what we're targeting, is the potassium in those blends. It is essential. Potassium is essential for all living things. In fact, humans need 4,700 milligrams of it in our diet every single day. And the way we get that is from food. And one thing that's helped me understand all of this, being a miner, is the mineral exchange. And so what we're doing with food is we're absorbing minerals that are coming from the soil. It's been transformed into a form that we can consume, and our bodies are made up of those minerals. So the farmers need to put those minerals back into the soils to produce the crops. Sulphur is also an interesting component to this because it is needed, not necessarily by all crops, but in Western Australia we see a lot of canola here, and that uses a lot of sulphur. So again, it's a very efficient fertiliser, not just for the high value chloride sensitive horticultural products, but also some of our broad acreage crops, being canola or in the or more arid or more acidic soils as well, where they aren't able to rely on the rainfall to flush it through and leach it out of the soils that the chlorides are. So going back to the global megatrends, it is so much about, we need more and more of this product, and we need to feed more and more people from reducing areas of arable land and increasing that fertilisation rate. On that graph, you can just see how quickly things are changing. We need to replenish the soils, and we need to build up the soils for sustainable agriculture and sustainable food production. From a mining perspective, it also needs to be quite sustainable from a margin perspective. These projects can last for decades. And in fact, I'll talk about it a little bit later in geology-wise, but the fact is there's only about 1/3 of the world's demand for sulphate of potash comes from these primary sources that we're talking about in exploration. Another 1/3 to 1/2 comes from a chemical process where they purchase the muriated potash, and they also have to buy sulphuric acid to add the sulphur into the chemical mix, and they put it into a blast furnace, pressurise it and heat it to 800 degrees to create the ion exchange. And then they produce, as a byproduct, hydrochloric acid, about 1.2 tonnes for every tonne of sulphate of potash. That then needs to be discharged. It can't be stored. It's a highly corrosive acid, and it's not necessarily an acid of demand. So I've seen some prices in the past of about $25 a tonne for hydrochloric acid if there's a market for it, versus $125 a tonne for sulphuric acid. So it has this very high taxing environmental cost to produce it, and it's also quite a difficult thing to deal with when you've got to deal with all of that hydrochloric acid. Whereas looking for brine, because we've got that natural endowment of solar and solar evaporation, we can produce these sulphate of potash organically, but also at the lower end of the cost curve, with that Mannheim process creating a price floor. So more production from solar potash projects is better for the environment, better for our food source, but it also means that we're not playing in the margins of the cost curve with these projects. We are the drivers of the margin, sitting in that lower end in Q1 and Q2. So to talk about our projects, I took this photograph in July from the helicopter, trying to get some sort of image that shows a scale. These are huge projects out there, and it really doesn't quite do it justice. Because if you look at it, the paleochannel system that's feeding into Lake Throssell is draining the Gibson Desert, and Throssell is at the terminus of that drainage system, where all the water over many, many years has been dissolving the rocks like potassium-rich granites, taking the minerals with it, coming down the system and evaporating with 3 metres of evaporation every year, concentrating and creating these salt lake systems. So we have these great big player areas, the salt lakes, and underneath it, these ancient riverbed systems. At Throssell, so we have a high grade discovery there. It sits very, very well with the two projects that are under construction, the grade wise, like Callium Lakes and Lakeway for SO4. We have drilled just the superficial aquifer at this stage, and my next slide will talk about the gravity and the programs coming up. But here we can see high grade consistently across that entire lake area, and we're talking some 323 square kilometres within that tenement in that map. And all up, we have about 1,085 square kilometres just at Lake Throssell, with about 70 kilometres of interpreted paleochannel sitting under that. It is really consistent high grade there, with 90% of the results of those drill holes returning over 10,000 milligrams per litre sulphate of potash. So the next program is to go and test this fantastic gravity image, and I'm a mining engineer and I'm excited about the gravity because it shows just so clearly the paleochannel system. It's about 46 kilometres, it's up to about 6 kilometres wide, that valley, and even in the Thalweg, which is at the lowest part of the channel system, it's interpreted to be up to about 2 kilometres wide. So there's really great potential for there to be a very substantial basal aquifer sitting under that sitting under the Salt Lake system. We're just waiting on a drill rig at the moment. It has been a little bit delayed, but in the next couple of weeks, hopefully those gold peers of mine will relinquish one of those drill rigs that we need to get out there on the lake, and we will get this drilled. It's a program that will take us about 3 to 4 weeks, and that will target that entire paleochannel system, 46 kilometres of it, and we anticipate announcing the maiden inferred resource for Lake Throssell, both the basal aquifer and the superficial aquifer, in the next quarter. To build up the story there at Lake Throssell, so a high-grade, potentially large project on its own. We've also got a satellite project called Lake RASON. It's a bit more advanced. We were able to drill that a little bit earlier, with tenements being granted first, and that gives us 6 million tonnes of sulphate of potash at the moment, about a third of the grade of Lake Throssell, but it's still substantial in scale. And the tenement to the west of that was just recently granted last month, and that will continue to add to the story there at Lake RASON. And that's also the higher grade end of that project. So we're talking about potentially a production hub at Lake Throssell and a satellite project there at Lake RASON. So we did have a little bit of a disruption earlier in the year. We are on Nuttinjara country, And to respect the traditional owners in the June quarter, we postponed all of our exploration drilling just to make sure that we weren't bringing COVID into their country. But collectively, we've been working together in the background, and we were able to get back on country in July. And that's when we did that helicopter auger program. We can see the photographs of the helicopter. And also with the gravity. The next step is to do this air core drilling on the lake and off the lake program right along that 46-kilometre channel, and that will give us a potential inferred resource next quarter. Because we really believe that this is going to be a substantial project there at Lake Throssell, we've already commenced work on the concept study, and we'll be starting work on the benchtop evaporation trial from a bulk sample that we took from that helicopter program, and the environmental studies to start the process, because unlike my neighbours in Kalgoorlie, the environmental process will take us a little bit longer because we do need to identify and do all the baseline data because it hasn't, or the baseline surveys, because it hasn't yet been done out there at all. In fact, these are the first holes that have ever been drilled in this country. So talking about going back to our market cap, $10 million, 4 in the bank, we have a lot of upside to go. So why invest in Trigg? If I haven't convinced you yet, the story really is it's strong global market and demand fundamentals driven by global megatrends. We are in the low-risk jurisdiction of Western Australia with a strategic land holding of 100% ownership of 1,585 square kilometres of tenure across 2 solar sulphate of potash projects. We are well supported by infrastructure with roads, rail, airports, airstrips and gas pipelines. And Lake Throssell is a rapidly evolving, high-grade, substantial sulphate of potash project. Lake RASON supports the story further with another 6 million tonnes in resource, and we are highly leveraged to growth. And you cannot do this without a team of fantastically motivated people that love working on salt lakes, love working in mud, and get excited about discovering water. Thank you. I'll just leave this on the appendix just so you can see it, have an idea of what the flow sheet might look like when we get to build it.
Thanks, Karen. One quick question. The drilling that's about to start, why does that matter to shareholders? Why is that could that be a catalyst?
I think that's going to be a game changer because we'll be able to categorically define that resource, and we'll be able to put some numbers around this high-grade discovery. So it's going to be a big moment, big milestone.
How long will it take? Do we know whether that's done what it's meant to do?
Or depending on how quick the labs, let's just say probably January will be the results for that. Yep.
Okay, thanks very much, Karen.
Thanks, Paul.